Aloha, Art. First of all, thanks for taking a few minutes away from Hawaii.
Hey, Jeff, happy to be here.
Now, I'll keep this short because I know people aren't tuning in to hear me, Art. They're here to hear you. Art, I had an interesting conversation with a realtor this week. She told me about two homes, same neighborhood, almost identical square footage, very similar condition. One sold in 5 days. The other one sat on the market for 5 months. How does this happen?
Jeff, that's actually one of the biggest misconceptions people have today. People think houses either sell or they don't. The truth is, good homes still sell quickly. Homes that miss the mark, they tend to sit.
So let's unpack that. If they're basically the same house, what made one fly off the market while the other one collected dust?
Maybe pricing would be the first thing.
So you mean just being $10,000 or $20,000 too high?
Exactly.
What's the second thing?
Factor number two is presentation. Could be the photography, the condition, the way the house was staged.
So buyers today are being much pickier. Okay, so what's number three?
Factor number three, negotiation strategy, seller concessions, mortgage strategy, and of course, creative financing.
Wait, so two homes can have exactly the same asking price, but the finance package makes one dramatically more attractive?
Jeff, I think this is one of the biggest misconceptions in today's housing market. Most people assume buyers make decisions based on one number, the asking price, but that's rarely how buyers make decisions. Today's buyers are looking at something much bigger. They're asking themselves three questions. Can I afford the monthly payment? How much cash do I need to bring to closing? And does the home fit my family's lifestyle and goals? That's where the strategy comes into play. Let me give you an example. Imagine two identical homes listed at $700,000. On paper, they look exactly the same, but home A is simply listed for sale. There's no additional strategy behind it. Home B is also listed for $700,000, but the seller is willing to help with closing costs. Maybe they're willing to contribute toward a temporary rate buy down. Maybe there's flexibility in how the financing is structured. Now, think about the buyer sitting at their kitchen table. They're not just comparing two homes, they're comparing monthly payments, they're comparing how much money they'll need to bring to closing, and they're comparing whether they still have savings left after they move in. Suddenly, those two homes don't feel identical anymore. The one with the better financing strategy often becomes the more attractive home, even though the asking price is exactly the same. That's something many homeowners never think about. They assume if the home isn't selling, the answer is simply to lower the price. Sometimes that's true, but many times using those same dollars differently creates much more value for the buyer. Instead of reducing the purchase price by $20,000, perhaps those funds are used to buy down the interest rate, pay closing costs, or structure the transaction in a way that makes better sense for the homeownership more affordable. The result, the buyer wins, the seller wins, and the home often sells faster. That's why I always tell clients that we're not just negotiating the purchase price, we're designing the entire financial transaction. When you approach it in that way, opportunities begin to appear that many buyers and sellers never knew existed. And that's where experience really makes the difference. They're not just comparing two homes, they're comparing monthly payments. They're comparing how much money they'll need to bring to closing. They're comparing whether they'll still have savings left over after they move in. Suddenly, those two homes don't feel identical anymore. The one with the better financing strategy often becomes the more attractive home, even though the asking price is exactly the same. That's something many homeowners never think about. They assume if the home isn't selling, the answer is simply to lower the price. Sometimes that's true, but many times using those same dollars differently creates much more value for the buyer. Instead of reducing the purchase price by $20,000, perhaps those funds are used to buy down the interest rate, pay closing costs, or structure the transaction in a way that makes home ownership more affordable. The result, the buyer wins, the seller wins, and the home often sells faster. That's why I always tell clients that we're not just negotiating the purchase price, we're designing the entire financial transaction. When you approach it that way, opportunities begin to appear that many buyers and sellers never knew existed, and that's where experience really makes a difference.
Art, I think this is probably the biggest takeaway so far. You're not just selling a house, you're designing a transaction that makes it easier for someone to buy that house. As always, Art, your advice seems so strategically right on. Before we wrap up today and let you get back to the waves and the Hawaiian breezes, what would you tell homeowners out there about to put their home on the market so that they move it fast, but they don't feel like they had to give it away?
Jeff, the first thing I'd tell them is this. Don't start with the question, how much can I get for my house? Start with the question, how do I position my home to attract the strongest buyers? Those are two very different conversations. The homeowners who consistently get the best results are the ones who prepare. They price their home based on today's market, not last year's headlines. They present it beautifully. They make it easier for buyers to fall in love with it. And they work with professionals who know how to structure a transaction that benefits both the buyer and the seller. The goal isn't to sell your home for less. The goal is to create enough interest that buyers compete for it. When that happens, you're negotiating from a position of strength instead of wondering why your phone isn't ringing. And finally, don't do it alone. Before you put that for sale sign up in the yard, sit down with the people who understand today's market. A 1-hour conversation before you list your home can save you weeks or even months of frustration later. Every market is different. Every neighborhood is different. And every family's situation is different. That's why strategy beats guesswork.
I love that. Strategy beats guesswork. And I think that's really the message from today's show. Two homes can look almost identical, but the one with the better strategy is usually the one with the better outcome. Art, thanks for spending a little time on your vacation with us. We truly appreciate it.
My pleasure, Jeff. And if you're thinking about buying or selling, don't make those decisions based on headlines or what your neighbor tells you. Let's have a conversation about your situation. I'd be honored to help you build the right strategy.
You can reach Art and the MortgageWorks team using the information you see on the screen. Thanks for joining us for another Mortgage Minute. We'll see you next time.